Welcome to qiphyedu. Today we'll be looking at economics paper 12, February-March 2020. Alright, let's start. Okay, so for the first question, it says the diagram shows the production possibility curve of a desert island economy where the inhabitants produce just two commodities, coconuts and fish. So you can see we have coconuts and fish. And what explains the shape of the production possibility curve? This curve indicates that the opportunity cost is constant because it's a straight line. So let's look at the options here. A, it says coconuts and fish are perfect complements, which is not correct. Because in order to determine whether or not two products are complements or substitutes, you need to have two DS graphs, which basically stands for demand supply graph. And assuming that, let's say it's complements, that means that, for example, we have our supply demand graph. And then, for example, let's say there is a increase in price, let's say good X. Increase in price, which means that the supply curve, let's say, shifts to the left, so there's an increase in price. This will result in the other product, let's say product Y, having a reduction in its demand. Now, this means that both of them are complements because first of all, the price of good X is increasing, the demand for good Y is decreasing. So that means that this is a negative number for the cross elasticity of demand. Likewise, if let's say right now that for let's say good X still remains the same, it's an increase in price, but then for good Y, assuming that this is also the same thing here, so my supply graph, you end up having an increase in demand for good Y. This means that the increase in price and the increase in demand, the percentage change are both positive, which means that both of them are substitutes. Because due to the higher prices of good X, people end up switching over to good Y, so there's an increase in demand for good Y. But previously, the previous graph that I wrote for Y, that means that both of them, if let's say there's a decrease, there's an increase in price for good X, it results in a decrease in supply, a decrease in demand for good Y, because you have to have both of them because they're complements, right? So that means that A, B are definitely not the answer because you cannot be able to prove that in APPC. Question option C, the inhabitants consume more fish and coconuts, which is definitely, I mean, if you look from this graph, it doesn't say the value, and there's no exact way to prove that the inhabitants consume more fish and coconuts because this is the PPC. It's to show the maximum combination of two goods that can be produced in an economy. It's not the consumption. And so the answer should be D. The opportunity cost of increasing fish production is constant because of the constant opportunity cost. So it should be D. Question 2. A worker earns $40 per hour. Rather than work, she decides to visit a museum for 3 hours. The visit costs a total of $40. And what is the opportunity cost of visiting the museum? So now, since we are now discussing about opportunity cost, there's only one thing that we need to keep as a variable, and all the others must remain constant. So that will be the price. So now, instead of going to work, she decides to go to a museum for 3 hours. And then the visit costs a total of $40. So the thing that is a variable here will be the price. So now, assuming that I don't work at all, I won't earn anything. Now I go to this museum and I need to pay $40. And not only that, I am going there for 3 hours. So that means that instead of actually going to work and then earn that $40 for 1 hour, now I decide to go to museum for 3 hours. That means that instead of earning $120, I'm spending $40. So the opportunity cost of visiting a museum is actually $120 because I'm actually not earning the $120 for work. I'm instead going to spend the 3 hours doing nothing, doing something else other than work. So the answer is C. Question 3. The newspaper article contains the following comments. The burden of tax should be shifted more to the highest earners. So should be is basically based on opinion. And question 2, comment 2, it is in the public interest that key services are nationalized. This one is a normative statement because it says it is in the public interest. It's based on personal opinion. There's no way to prove that. So it's not like there's no way to prove that, but it's like it's based more towards opinions and more towards a bias. So both of them are actually normative statements. So answer is A. Question 4. which change in the way resources are allocated in the economy is consistent with moving from a planned economy to a market economy. So a planned economy is essentially when the economy, the decisions made are made completely by the central government. And then in the market economy, the items are sold, then they're sold on the market based on the price mechanism and market forces completely. So there's a missing market for public goods and merit goods basically. So A, it says a minimum price guarantee for apple producers is removed, which is correct. Let's look at the other three options. A new government authority is established. So anything that says new government authority established, this means that there's government intervention. So nope. C, the production of apples is subsidized. This is the government intervention. And D, the sale of apples has a maximum price, which is government intervention. So I'd say A. Question 5. In which circumstance will the total expenditure by consumers on a good increase when its price increases? So the price increases and then the total expenditure increases. This only happens when the demand is price inelastic. So A, it says demand for the good is income elastic, which is not correct. Income elastic is basically when the good is a normal good. And then B, it says demand for the good is price inelastic, which is correct. And C, the price of a complementary good also increases, which means that the total expenditure for the original good would have to decrease. So this is not correct. And D, the price of subsidy goods also increases. If the price of subsidy goods also increases, then your total expenditure would not actually increase, it will actually just remain the same. So answer is B. Question 6. When will a manufacturer's ability to increase the quantity supply in the short run be greater? So to increase quantity supply in the short run, it has to be elastic. So that means that it cannot be perishable. It have to use very you don't have to have highly skilled labor. Any labor will work just fine. So A, it says when labor is immobile, which is not correct. B, it says spare capacity exists, which is correct. C, it says when the product is perishable, which is not correct. And D, when unemployment is low, which is not correct. Because when unemployment is low, you cannot have enough labor to actually produce that particular product. So it's not D. You need, if in order to increase the quantity supply in the short run, you need to make sure that you have a significant amount of labor for that particular production. So unemployment should not be low, because that means that you have less labor to deal with to produce a particular product. Question 7. The diagram shows the market for strawberries. The original equilibrium position is at X. And what will be the new position following the failure of strawberries to ripen and the fall in the price of cream, a complement of strawberries? So the failure of strawberries to ripen will result in the supply curve to shift to the left. And then the fall in the price of cream, which is a complement, will result in an increase in demand for strawberries. So answer is A. Because, like I said earlier, a complement, meaning that if there's a fall in price, it will be something like this. So assuming this is your DS supply-demand graph. And now when there's a fall in price, this means that the supply curve shifts to the right. Then, at the same time, your demand curve for strawberries, this one I'll say, this is cream. This is strawberry. So this is your, and then your demand will shift to the right. So yeah, this means that both of them, the percentage change is positive. So the percentage change is negative because there is a fall in price, which is a negative, and then there's an increase in demand, which is positive. So that means that both of them are complements. So answer is A. Okay, so for question 8, good X is related to good Y. Incomes increase and the price of good Y falls, and which combination would give the greatest increase in demand for good X? So incomes increase and price of good Y falls. So assuming this is your supply and demand curve, and then this is good Y. So if the price of good Y falls, this could be when the supply curve shifts to the right, and your incomes increase. So this means that in order for the demand to increase greatly for good X, this means that both of them have to be complements, because when there's a decrease in price, there is an increase in demand for good X. Okay, and when there's an increase in income, normally the demand for that particular good would have to increase as well. So This means that there has to be a normal good, because the only way, or I should say the way that inferior goods have an increase in demand is when there's a decrease in income, because that's only when people will be able to afford, because people will only be able to afford inferior goods instead of normal goods. So AB is wrong, and both of them should not be substitutes, because if they are substitutes, that means that when the price of good Y falls, the quantity demanded for good X will also decrease. Now we want the greatest increase in demand for good X, so they both of them have to be complements. Plus is C. Question 9. What must be correct when the free market for good is in disequilibrium? That means that it could either be there's a maximum price or minimum price that are effective. For example, maximum price below equilibrium and minimum price above equilibrium. So A, it says consumers can buy all the good that they demand at the market price, which is wrong because the market price is the equilibrium price and is in disequilibrium, so it's not correct. And B, producers can sell all of the good that they supply at the market price, which is also not correct because it still says market price. And C, the market price of the good will not change, which is not correct because the market price is determined based on when the good is, even if the good is in this equilibrium or not, that will still be the market price. Let's say there's a minimum price or maximum price, that will be the market price because that's what the price is set at. And D, the quantity of the good demanded differs from the quantity supplied, which is correct because if let's say there's a maximum price, this means that you have an increase in demand but a decrease in supply. So this is when there's an effective maximum price. Or let's say that there is a minimum price, then your supply will be more than your demand. So yes, the quantity of good demanded differs from the quantity supplied. So answer is D. Oops. Question 10. A power station burns waste to produce electricity. This also produces a byproduct of fertilizer for farmers. And what is the effect in the fertilizer market of an increase in the demand for electricity? So when there's an increase in demand for electricity, there will be an increase in supply for fertilizer. And so the price of fertilizer would actually fall because, so let's see your supply and demand curve again. There's an increase in demand for electricity, so you can look something like this. Demand curve shifts to right, and then at the same time, because there's an increase in demand for electricity, this also produces more byproducts. So then your supply and demand curve will be like this, and then there's an increase in supply, so the price drops. So price of fertilizer will fall, so CD is wrong. And then the quantity supply would actually rise, and the quantity demanded will also rise. So yep, so A should be the answer because quantity demanded actually rise. As you can see from here, on this, you can see from here, that's how it is. And then question 11, the table shows the supply and demand for avocados in Mexico City. As a result of lower transport costs, supply rises by 60 kg at all prices. And what is the new equilibrium price? So supply rises 60 kg at all prices. You can see originally the equilibrium price is at 40 kilogram, $40 per kilogram. So when there's a supply rise by 60 kg, that means it's 250. So 250, or it could be we have to add 60 to everything here. So for example, let's say 230 plus 60 will be 290, 190 plus 60 is 250, and then 150 plus 60 is 210, and then 110 plus 60 is 170. So you can see that the new equilibrium price would be the one with the same demand and the same supply. So this would be $35. So answer is C. Because of the quantity demanded, which is 210 kg, and quantity supply, which is also 210 kg. All right. Question 12, the diagram shows the demand curve for pineapples. And what happens to the value of PED when there's a movement from point X to point Y? And what describes the value at point Y? So the higher the point on the demand curve, the PED would then be more elastic. So this one would be like PED more than 1. And if it goes down, the PED will then decrease. And in this position, it's most likely that the PED is less than 1. So the effect on value of PED would be 4. 4. So CD is wrong. And then the value of PD at Y would be inelastic because, like I said, if the point is higher, then the PED will be more than 1. But if it's lower, the PED will be less than 1. So it's inelastic. So I say it's B. Question 13. 4 firms produce furniture. The table shows the price of sales supply for each firm. If the price of furniture rises by 5%, which firm will experience an increase in quantity supply of 2.5%? So the way to calculate PS would be percentage change of quantity supply over percentage change in price. And we know that that will equal to PS. So here, let's try 1 by 1. So for example, PS for this one will be 2.5. And then increased quantity supply will be, let's say 2.5 divided by 5. This will give us the 0.5, so this is not correct. So you can see we already have the answer, because you can see the increase in quantity supply is 2.5% and the increase in price is 5%, so we get 0.5. So the answer is D. Question 14. Which argument has often been used to justify the privatization of state enterprises? So we are talking about privatization of a national company. So A, it says private firms can produce the same outputs using fewer inputs, which is correct. B, it says private firms try to earn large profits, which doesn't justify. C, it says state enterprises are always monopolies which exploit customers, which is not really justified. And D, it says state enterprises cannot operate without government subsidies, which is not the main argument here. So it should be that private firms can produce the same output using fewer inputs, meaning more efficiency. So answer is A. Question 15. A government imposes a maximum rent in order to make rented housing more affordable. And what is likely to be a long-run consequence if the maximum maximum rent is set below the current free market level? So, let's just take a look at the demand-supply curve again. So this one is a supply curve, so it's a demand curve. Maximum set below the current free market price, so that means that there will be a shortage of rented housing. A, it says a shortage of applicants for rented housing, meaning that there's a decrease in demand, which is not correct. B, a shortage of rented housing, which is correct. C, it says an increase in supply, which is wrong. D, it says an increase in number of houses being rented, which is wrong. Answer is B. Question 16. What will be categorized as direct government provision of goods and services? So A, it says a government grant to a firm to provide healthcare services, which is not correct. And then B, it says a government regulation on the amount of sugar, which is not correct. C, a government subsidy, which is not correct. And it should be D, a government takeover of a local bus service. Because you see that for A, B, C, all of them are like paying for someone to do something. Like, for example, A says a government grant to a firm. B says a government regulation. Government regulation meaning that you're controlling the amount of a particular item. So it's not like it's providing them, but like regulation. And C is a subsidy to a firm. So it's like giving it to another firm that is controlling, like, let's say a particular product, for example. It's not like a direct provision. A direct provision will be directly from the government to the people. So a government take over a local bus service, meaning that the bus company would now be in the hands of the government. So the ones that are operating the bus service is the government, and then the government would then be the one providing the bus service to people, right? And then for question 17, which type of tax is the 15% sales tax levied in South Africa? Sales tax is an indirect tax, so A and C are not correct. And then this one is 15%, so it is ad valorem, indirect, because if it's a specific tax, it will be something like this. And then if it's ad valorem, it could be something like this. Like, let's say you earn $20,000 and then you need to pay 15%. You realize that if, let's say, you were to buy more of the stuff, you end up paying for more than, let's say, like, if it's compared with specific indirect, that means that regardless of what price you pay, it will always be an additional $20 for tax. That means that it's only a rise in $20, but then here is percentage. So if you calculate by percentage, the numbers will keep rising every time you spend more and more and more. So this one will be ad valorem because they are not the same. You can see that they are not parallel. Parallel would be specific indirect tax. Question 18, what is an example of a transfer payment? A transfer payment will basically be from a government to the people and there's no production taking place. It could be from the government to the people, it could be someone to someone, but then there's no production taking place. So A says a household moving savings from one bank account to another, which is not correct. B says a money repayment on a loan used to buy a new cooker, which is not correct. C says the amount paid to transport goods, which is not correct. And D, the payment of student grants by the government, which is correct, because no production takes place. Question 19, what will lead to an immediate improvement in the balance of payments deficit on current account? So a balance of payments deficit is basically when your outflow of money is more than the inflow. So now in order to improve this means that we have to reduce the outflow of money. So A, it says a fall in interest rates will result in more outflow money because you're buying more of imported goods. B, it says a reduction in dividend payments to foreign investors, which is correct because this will reduce the outflow money to investors from other countries. C, it says a reduction in the standard rate of income taxes will result in higher expenditure because of a higher aggregate one. And D, an increase in the level of government current expenditure, which could result in more outflow money because the items that the government may purchase would probably be from overseas. So answer is B. Because here it also stated immediate improvement. So the fastest way to actually reduce your balance of payments deficit would be a reduction in dividend payments, because by cutting off the dividend payments, you are actually stopping outflow money to other countries immediately. Alright? And then for question 20, an appreciation of the South African rand in the foreign exchange market is most likely to assist the South African government achieve what policy objective? So an appreciation of the South African rand would actually result in, mostly if it's an appreciation of the currency, it will result in a reduction in the rate of inflation. So let's see which one would be the answer. A says the redistribution of income, which is not correct, because here you will also see the main point with foreign exchange market. B says the reduction in rate of inflation. It says B, but let's take a look at C and D. C says the reduction in the volume of imports, which is not correct, because here it says most likely and foreign exchange market. And D, an increase in the level of employment, which is not correct. In order to increase the level of employment, you actually have to depreciate the currency. You have to depreciate the currency in order to be able to increase the level of employment. So answer is B. 21. 4 countries A, B, C, D trade internationally. Each circle in the diagram represents a free trade area between the countries within the circle. A country can belong to more than one free trade area. Countries outside of a circle face trade barriers. And which country has the greatest opportunity to benefit from free international trade? So it has to be the one that is within the 3 circles. So the answer is B, because this means that B actually belongs to 3 free trade areas. So that means that B has the greatest opportunity to benefit from free international trade because it covers 3 areas. All the others you can see, for example, C, this portion is only for one particular area, or maybe not. Actually only one. And then A is two free trade areas, and then D is also only one. So answer is B because it covers 3 free trade areas. 22, the diagram shows Greece's trade position with the EU between 2005 and 2014, and how does the Greek trade balance with the EU differ in 2014 compared to 2005? So you can see that in 2005, the imports from the EU is about $35 billion, and then exports is about $11 billion. And then in 2014, you can see that it's roughly about $30 billion, and then probably around $20 billion. So there is a decrease deficit. So A, B, it says increased deficit and increased surplus, which is not correct. So answer is C, a reduced deficit, because the difference between the imports and exports is getting lower. So it has to be a reduced deficit. And then question 23, a central bank forecasts a rise in raw material costs. The government plans to increase spending on health and education. The initial equilibrium point is shown by X on the aggregate demand, AD, and aggregate supply, 8S diagram. And what will be the new equilibrium point in the short run if the forecast prove to be accurate and the government plans are implemented? So, a central bank forecasts a rise in raw material costs, so AS curve will shift to the left. Government plans to increase spending, so AD curve shifts to the right. So answer is C. 24, a country with floating exchange rate experiences a large surplus on the current account of its balance of payments, and what is likely to decrease as a consequence? So, a surplus basically when your inflow is more than your outflow. So 24, the 4 options here, you can see A says exports of capital from the country will decrease, which is not correct. B says the level of employment in the country will decrease, which is not likely to decrease. And then C, it says the price of imports in the country. Yes, because there's a large surplus on the current account of its balance payments. Your inflow is more than your outflow, so your import prices would then decrease. And then D, it says the value of the country's currency. Nope, it's not going to decrease, because now you hold more of your own personal currency, so that means your currency is now more valuable, so the price of imports would now become lower. Question 25. In 2018, an investor in the United States purchased shares in a German bank. In December 2018, the US investor was paid a dividend on these shares, and how were these activities recorded? So you can see that it says capital account, which is not in the current syllabus, but yeah, we do it anyways. So you can see that share purchase should be under it should be under debit, so it's not credit, so AB is wrong. It has to be capital account debit, and then dividend payment should be credit, so answer is C. Debit being that you pay, and then credit you get back through the dividends. 26. Which statement describes disinflation? Disinflation is basically a decrease in the rate of inflation. So A, it says a fall in the price level. This is deflation. A fall in the rate of inflation is correct because that's exactly what disinflation is. C, it says a rise in the value of money. This is deflation. Inflation below zero is also deflation. So answer is B. Question 27. In a closed economy, a rise in aggregate demand is needed to increase output in the country. And what is necessary to achieve this increase in output? So AD must shift to a right. So A, it says enough capacity to produce the extra goods and services demanded. This one, yes, this is correct. And then B, it says free trade to allow imports to make up any shortage in supply, which is not correct. C, it says government spending to be less than tax revenue, which would result in a GDP. It result in a lower GDP, and then your revenue is more than your spending, so that means that there's a surplus. And D, reduce credit to lower inflation, which will result in the AD to shift to left, so it's also not correct, so answer has to be A. And then in question 28, a country with a fixed exchange rate and a deficit in the current account of its balance payments enters a recession. It devalues its currency in an effort to correct its balance of payments, and under which condition is the deficit most likely to improve? For the deficit to improve, this will be based on your Marshall Lerner's condition. That means that your sum of PED for imports and exports must be more than 1. So the ones here that have PED X plus M more than 1 would be B and D. So it could be B or D. And then your income elasticity demand for imports should also be elastic, because when you devalue your currency, this means that the imports would then be more expensive. That means that you decrease your purchasing of imported goods. So it has to be more than 1. So answer is D. Question 29. What is an example of fiscal policy aimed at increasing aggregate demand in the economy? So fiscal policy is basically when your expenditure or increases or decreases, and your taxes increase or decreases. In this case, it says increasing aggregate demand, so it has to be increase in expenditure and a decrease in taxes. So A, it says increasing expenditure by firms on skill training programs. This is under supply side policy. And then B, it says increasing the commercial bank's lending ability. This is under this should be under your monetary policy. And then C, it says reducing the real income tax for all income earners, which is correct. D, it says reducing real interest. This is under monetary policy, so answer is C. And then question 30, a country with a fixed exchange rate experiences a balance of payments surplus, and which policy measure will enable it to maintain its exchange rate? So there's a surplus. That means that your inflow is more than the outflow. So we have to increase expenditure, we have to decrease interest rate, or we have to increase money supply, or we have to decrease taxes. So A, it says decreasing government borrowing, and B, it says decreasing government spending, both of which will result in more surplus. And then C, decreasing interest rate, which is correct. And D, it says decreasing money supply, which will result in more balance of payment surplus. So the answer is C. Alright, so this is the end of this paper. I hope you find this video helpful. Next video would probably be about another past year paper question, and it should be economics as well. And I hope to see you again in the next video. Till then, this is qiphyedu.